liberty, freedom. You hear these words everywhere, right? They're these huge, powerful ideas that people are willing to fight for, to protest for, and sometimes even to die for. But what are we really talking about when we say we want to be free?
Because here's the real puzzle. All through history, and yeah, even right now, you see groups that are total opposites, bitter enemies, and they both claim that they're the ones fighting for liberty. How on earth is that possible? I mean, just think about the Cold War. You had the liberal, democratic West on one side and the communist East on the other. And both sides, even though they were mortal enemies, were absolutely convinced that they were the ones crusading for freedom. And this wasn't just some kind of marketing spin. They truly, genuinely believed it. It's a massive contradiction that just begs for an explanation.
Well, it turns out the answer to this whole puzzle, the key that kind of unlocks this entire debate, comes from a super influential essay written way back in 1958 by a philosopher named Isaiah Berlin.
What he argued was that all this confusion comes from a basic mistake. We think we're talking about one single idea, but we're not. He said there are actually two totally different fundamental ways of thinking about what it means to be free.
So if we really want to get to the bottom of why people fight over freedom, we've got to understand these two concepts. And Berlin gave them names: negative and positive liberty.
Okay, so first up is negative liberty. The easiest way to think about this one is freedom from. It's all about the absence of stuff, the absence of chains, of walls, of other people getting in your business and telling you what to do. It's basically the space where you can do what you want without anyone stopping you. But then you've got positive liberty, and this is completely different. This is freedom to. It's not about what's missing, it's about what's there. It's about having self-control, being autonomous. It's the freedom to be the captain of your own ship, the master of your own destiny, and not being controlled by something else, whether that's another person, a bad habit, or even your own worst impulses.
So let's just lay it all out, side by side. On the one hand, negative liberty is all about being left alone, no obstacles, no interference. And on the other, you've got positive liberty, which is about being in the driver's seat, being your own master. See, they're two totally different ways of looking at the world, but we use the exact same word, freedom, for both of them.
Now, this is the point where a lot of people who hear about this for the first time make a really common mistake. They kind of jump to a conclusion that seems simple, but it's not quite right.
They think, oh, okay, I get it. Negative liberty, freedom from, that's the good stuff. That's what liberal democracies are all about. And positive liberty, being your own master, well, that sounds like something that could be twisted to force people to be free, so that must be the bad, scary, totalitarian kind.
But nope, that's not what Berlin was saying at all. His point was actually way more subtle and honestly a lot more powerful. He wasn't trying to pick a winner here. In his own words, he said they both represent ultimate values, things that human beings deeply, truly care about. Now, he definitely did warn that the idea of positive liberty had been twisted and abused by totalitarian regimes throughout history, but he saw that as a dangerous possibility, not something baked into the idea itself. All right, so enough with the theory. How does this actually work in the real world? Well, once you start looking through these two lenses, negative and positive liberty, you start to see them clashing everywhere.
Let's start with a kind of surprising example. Just the freedom to go for a hike. This really shows how two different negative liberties can crash right into each other.
So check this out. In the United Kingdom, a landowner's right to their property is balanced by what's called the public right-of-way. There are over 100,000 miles of public footpaths that snake right across private land. But in the US, a landowner's rights are generally much, much stronger. So you have a direct conflict. One person's negative liberty, their freedom from having trespassers on their land, is clashing with another person's negative liberty, their freedom to walk through the countryside without being blocked. Okay, so let's move on to a much more dramatic example. It's the classic textbook case of being unfree. A mugger sticks a gun in your face and says, your money or your life. We can all agree you are not free in that moment. But why?
Well, Berlin's whole framework helps us see that there are actually two different things happening at once, and you really need both of his concepts to get the full picture.
So if you look at it through the negative liberty lens, you're unfree because your options have been violently stripped away. Your freedom from interference has been completely violated. But the positive liberty lens shows us something just as important. You're also unfree because your own will has been hijacked. You are no longer the master of your actions. The mugger is. You're not in control.
So, why does any of this philosophy stuff actually matter? Well, because getting this distinction right fundamentally changes how we think and how we talk about one of the most important values we have.
Here's the most important takeaway. Liberty isn't just one simple thing. It's more like a whole family of related and sometimes conflicting values. Berlin's two concepts aren't supposed to give us the final verdict on what's right or wrong. They're a toolkit, a better set of lenses to help us clarify what we and what other people are really truly fighting for when we shout about freedom.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. The next time you're listening to a political debate, or even just thinking about your own life and what you want, ask yourself this. When we say we want more freedom, are we asking for freedom from something getting in our way? Or are we asking for the freedom to become the people we want to be, the masters of our own lives? Knowing the difference? Well, that's the first step to really understanding what the fight is all about.